All right, guys, we are here. Bo Templin, welcome on, buddy. How we doing?
Doing all right. It's nice to meet you, brother. It's been a minute, but this feels right. This
It
feels good.
does. It does. This was definitely needed at some point. I think this is the right week to make it happen.
Can I get a clarification as to like how you know Will
All right,
or what's the
so
story here?
yeah, so I know you and Will worked together at the radio network before COVID hit. So I was working with Will on his Batman job at night at the restaurant. So when I moved out from Ohio, Will and I worked together at the restaurant when we didn't run into each other that often, but once COVID hit, we ran into each other picking up our last check and we kind of just started going back and forth. And he was like, "Hey man, like we should get together and start something." And it's crazy to think that, dude, that was a year ago.
Nuts. You guys have done honestly like a really good job. I love your guys' stuff. Love,
Oh,
love.
oh,
Like
thank you. Same
super
to you,
into it.
dude. Oh,
Yeah,
same.
keep
I
it
can't.
going.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I can't wait to every day I see you have a story or a post. I can't wait to hop on that. But yeah, no. So Will and I just kind of grew this from here, from that, and over time, he's had nothing but great things to say about you. I know you guys hopped on and you went over the Poirier McGregor fight
That's right.
about a
Yeah.
month ago. Yeah, and I was out of town that weekend, so I couldn't hop on for that, and it was devastating to me. So I'm happy we can make this happen for sure.
Yeah, no worries, bro. This is a great one. I mean, anytime the UFC heavyweight championship is on the line, like it's literally the fight that determines the baddest man on the planet. Like it's black and white. This
Yeah,
is the scariest dude who walks the planet Earth. And
literally.
that's why like everyone, I don't care who you are, how could you
Yeah.
not be interested?
I know, like these guys are just men, just pure large men who can just destroy anybody on any given day. And we're gonna jump in. We'll jump into the Stipe Ngannou fight, which you're referring to here. So Stipe trains out of Strong Style, which is about 45 minutes north of where I grew up. I actually have some friends I used to wrestle with in high school that are training out of there right now. Mo Miller's one of them. I believe he's the number one bantamweight or flyweight in Ohio right now, nationally ranked. So hopefully he continues to grow as well. But so this is the second time Ngannou and Stipe have met. Bo, the first time did not go as planned for Ngannou. In his pre-fight interview, DC and Stipe were sitting next to each other, and Ngannou had it was a short turnaround for him in the first title fight, and he said that he wasn't changing anything, and a question was directed to him as in, are you going to get better this training camp? And Ngannou kind of made a statement where, training camps aren't a time to get better. And Stipe and DC kind of looked at each other and gave each other that smirk. Like, do you think Ngannou's going to have a way different approach entering round two?
Yes, I think anytime like it's a learning experience, like point
Yeah,
blank. Prior to that, Ngannou had never felt lost. So in his
right,
head, yeah, that made sense. Why would I change anything? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Like,
right.
so for him, it made a lot of sense to feel that way. I also, a lot of times with these fighters, especially the international fighters, English is not their first language. So I don't take verbatim what a lot of those guys say to heart.
Okay.
Like the gist or message, yes, I can feel, you can feel confidence or you can feel doubt or insecurities come through. But when it comes to like, he might have been trying to say like, oh, honestly, my skills are my skills. This camp didn't determine whether or not I lost. But for
Right.
him as a second language, it can be incredibly hard. Like, dude, if I had to go do an interview in Spanish right now, my Spanish is so mediocre. I would sound like an idiot in Mexico. They'd be like, oh, Bo doesn't know what he's talking about. Oh, he's not prepared, blah, blah, blah. He's, drinking too much. And I probably would make a joke about drinking after the fight that I misspoke. So a lot of times with the international guys, you do have to kind of just be cautious that like, maybe that's not exactly what they were trying to say. In regards
Right.
to the training camp thing, yeah, I do think things have changed. The cool thing about MMA is that the game itself changes every 5 years.
Right.
And it's almost been it's been 4 years since
Yeah,
they
4
fought for
years.
the first time.
2017 was the first time they fought. Yeah.
Dude, think about how much has changed since then in the sport of MMA. Yeah, I think Francis has grown a lot since then. But at the same time, yeah, Stipe's probably learned a thing or two in that time as well. So, yeah, when Poirier fought McGregor for the second time, I talked to Robin Black, who's a great color analyst for the sport of MMA. And he said, yo, if you want to learn something about Poirier versus McGregor 2, don't watch their first fight because both of them have changed so much since then. feel that way a little bit about this fight as well.
Okay. So like with Stipe, he's had the trilogy with DC since then. You know, he took a loss to DC. I feel like after that DC fight, he took another 3, 4 steps forward. And Francis, since 2017, has just went back to just knocking people out left and right. That dude's power is unbelievable. What do you think Stipe, positionally wise, has to do this time around to avoid taking one of those powerful punches?
Well, the thing is like when they fought for the first time, he did take a couple of those punches. And I mean, really, if any of the 3 or 4 that were landed, the bombs that were landed in the first fight, if Francis was able to connect on a second one, a follow-up, the fight would have been over. But,
Right.
you know, you got to give credit to Stipe. First of all, he is tough as fuck. Like, dude,
So tough.
you don't eat those kind of shots if you're a normal human being. So
No.
we saw him eat those punches in the first fight and recover and grab a leg and do whatever he could. You know, the wrestling was almost served as like a defense mechanism a little bit.
Yeah.
And at times it didn't even feel offensive. It felt defensive. So I think in this fight, I don't want to say I would like to see, but I want to see if Stipe is offensive with his takedowns. Is he shooting, not panic shooting? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
that
no,
difference?
absolutely. Especially being like with my wrestling background, that makes perfect sense because you're right. In that first fight, oftentimes Stipe would take a punch and then lower his level and explode through the cage, get him on the mat, ground and pound for a couple minutes, and then wear Ngannou out to the point where they could either end the round or they get back up eventually. But no, I agree with that. I think the more offensive Stipe can be here and take the fight to Francis, the better the outcome might end up being for Stipe here.
Well, and they said, and fuck, now I can't remember who said it, but they were talking about Francis so we were talking about Francis since the first fight.
Yeah.
Has just dominated, right? It's
right.
literally been obliterations the whole time. But it kind of reminds me of the Milwaukee Bucks of the last 2 years, actually.
Ooh.
Killing squads in the regular season. Just by 20, by 30, Giannis isn't even playing in the fourth quarter.
Right.
Chris Middleton is resting these huge minutes. And in theory, that should be great and that should work. But would you rather have the 4 first-round knockouts that Francis has had, or would you rather have the rounds and the reps and the experience that Stipe's had in the trilogy against one of the greatest of all time in DC? And like, sure, yeah, he might have taken a little more damage than Francis has, and Francis is probably a little fresher.
Right.
But the experience gained in the last 4 years, you would look at it and say, oh my God, Stipe's the one with way more reps and way better experience since then. So I think a lot of people are kind of diminishing that dynamic of this.
Right. Like, it's not easy to become a UFC champion. Like, these are some of the baddest motherfuckers on the planet. And some of them have never seen into the deep 5th round like Stipe's seen the last couple of years. I mean, those rounds are different. That's where you get those belts strapped around your waist.
Remember, in the second fight with DC, he's losing on all 3 scorecards for the first 3 rounds. Yeah. And then in the 4th round, he perseveres. He survives the onslaught and finally breaks through in round 4.
Round 4 was the body shots, right? He just started unloading on DC's body, and it changed.
DC was winning that fight. It was 3-0 DC on all 3 scorecards. Round 4, he finally breaks through. He figures out the puzzle piece and lands the body shot. So you can never – that is priceless. That is a priceless experience to have, and we've never seen Francis really kind of reach that next step where in round 4 he's persevered, he's fought through it. And you can't hold it against him for knocking people out in the first round, but we just haven't seen that dynamic of his game yet.
No, you're absolutely right. So for Ngannou, we know that he has the power. And we know that Stipe is as solid as it gets on, I think it's safe to say, every level. Stipe is probably the most complete fighter in the UFC, I want to say, from top to bottom. What do you think Ngannou has to change in his training or kind of his approach going into this to make this more realistic to beat Stipe?
It's a good question. So there's probably two pools of thought on this. The first is that you don't change anything. You trust your power. Like What got him here? What got him back to the title? What's won him 4 fights in a row without like taking a single punch to the face? It's his power. That would probably be a little dismissive of what Stipe's abilities are. That would probably be trying to say that like, oh, Stipe's the same as the other guys that he's fought. And I just don't find that to be the case. Stipe's the greatest heavyweight of all time.
Yes.
Okay. So what has worked for Francis in the past might not work for this. The other thing that you probably would have to say is like the cardio a little bit. Right? You can't assume you're going to get a first round knockout. You almost have to say, all right, I'm going to get taken down in this fight. That will happen at some point. Stipe's the GOAT. He's a wrestler first.
Yeah.
He's a great wrestler. So just let's assume, plan for the best, or, hope for the best, plan for the worst though. Hopefully you get the first round knockout if you're Francis, but ultimately expect to be on your back at some point, right, and either prepare for your cardio afterwards or learn to get up right away. You see other heavyweights. Derek Lewis is a really good example of this. Derek Lewis can get taken down, but what Derek Lewis is really good at is getting up right away. It's unbelievable. Yep. It's like literally he just makes this conscious decision. He's like, you know what, fuck this, I'm done, and gets up. Other guys are like, you know what, I'll wear it. That's fine. You got the takedown. I'll be ready though by next round. So you have to kind of decide between those two schools. Like, am I going to work on getting back up, or am I going to work on being ready after this takedown is over?
No, you're absolutely right. And so this fight, going back to your Instagram real quick, you had a story post. I forget if it was today or yesterday, but GSP was asked the question, do athletes get better over time? And to me, this fight is the definition of that question. Do athletes get better over time? And I think that this is a good opportunity for both of these guys to show and answer that question for each other as well.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is I wish we could have Francis of now fighting Stipe of 2018 when they first fought, if that makes sense.
It does.
I think Francis is more in his prime now than Stipe is out of his prime now.
Right.
Still the heavyweight champ. I'm not taking a single goddamn thing away. First of all, if this gets clipped and there's any way that people spin this as Bo thinks Stipe is on the decline, that's going to make me mad. But he's, heavyweight champ for 6 years at this point.
Yeah.
Historically speaking, fighters tend to slow down after that kind of run.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of championship rounds under Stipe's belt at this point. Those are not easy rounds. Once you reach that pinnacle, everybody's coming for your head. And the fact that Stipe has been on top for so long, dude.
Yeah,
crazy.
It's pretty incomparable. It's a bummer too, because I feel like Stipe could be, and they're working on it. Honestly, so he's his agent now is Gary V's Vayner Sports.
Okay. Is
Stipe's agency.
Yeah.
And I know that's something that they're working on, but you would think, dude, a American immigrant family member in Stipe Miocic, Croatian family.
Yep. From
blue collar town. He's a fireman who's goofy and a nice family man. Oh, also happens to be the greatest heavyweight fighter of all time. He should be the most marketable and profitable fighter that's ever existed. And for some reason, he just isn't. So
yeah,
they're working on it though. And I think they got some pretty sweet things planned here in the near future.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see what you guys can do with Stipe to help promote him and market him. Because like you said, he's literally the nicest guy. He goes and fights fires in his free time.
Dude, and he's making millions in the UFC and has some downtime. So he's like, you know what? I'm gonna spend some hours over at the firehouse. Even this week, I don't know if you watched the show Embedded, which is the UFC's Hard Knocks kind of, where it's the behind the scenes of their fight week. And Stipe's first episode, it's all in the firehouse. And the guys are cracking jokes with him. And one of the things he said was I worked so hard to become a fireman. why would I just let it go and never do it again? Like, I put in so many hours of
Right.
training and preparation for this. Like, yeah, it's something I'm into, and the guys are good people. It's healthy for me, and
Yeah.
how could you not respect that?
Yeah, I mean everybody, especially fighters, like if you've never been involved with like wrestling or jiu-jitsu or UFC, anything like that, like it is mentally and physically exhausting to have an outlet to go do something that you just genuinely love to do. And in Stipe's case, it's being a fireman. You know, like that for him, that's probably the best rest that he can have.
Can't even imagine. Now, the only thing that okay, dude, like I'm a bum. Like I go to the boxing gym, 3, 4 times a week. I like getting my workouts in. I'm super scared of getting hit. Honestly, I'm a pussy. So I make it very clear that I am not a fighter. But when I go and like I know that I'm gonna spar that day, dude, my anxiety skyrockets. I'm
Oh, I believe
insecure,
it.
I'm nervous. Like you're standing in the corner. I got a dude across from me who's trying to go pro in fighting. I'm like, dude, I don't like getting hit in the face. So what are we doing right now? So my insecurity is so high and anxiety is skyrocketing. When I'm done, I'm drained. I just find it crazy that he goes from anxiety driven sport like MMA into anxiety driven profession like firefighting. Like
Right.
I don't know how he considers that downtime, but dude, he's just built different.
Literally built so
Built
different.
different, bro.
So even after everything that we're saying about the GOAT, the greatest heavyweight of all time, Stipe, he is still somehow the underdog on this card.
I
But my
know.
last question, does Stipe deserve to be an underdog ever, let alone in round 2 against Francis?
No, like the truth is no. And I'm not really a big picks guy,
Yeah,
just with the
absolutely.
company or whatever, but like, no. I'm cool with even money and I'm not totally cool with even money. How could you not respect Francis's power? Like
Exactly.
what makes Stipe so great is that he did defeat Francis the way he did. So to take away from Francis is like taking away from Stipe's legacy at this point. So that would
Yeah.
be totally unfair. I think even how could you just not look at this fight and say even money? Um, I don't know. I think if you're betting on Francis to win, you better be betting on him specifically in the first round KO. If you're
Right.
betting on Stipe to win, you better be betting on a 5-round decision win, or he wears him out and gets a finish in rounds 4 or 5. Like
I
I
agree.
don't think a money line pick in this fight makes a whole lot of sense, but I'm not like some gambling guru. I just always encourage people like, yo, if you're going to put money on this, be specific about it. Like get your
Right.
money's worth on this bet. It's either Francis in round 1 or it's Stipe by decision is ultimately like what I think this comes down to.
I agree with you. Obviously, on our show, we do a lot of gambling, a lot of picks, and everyone who's been hitting me
Yeah.
up about this fight, I've been telling them the same thing. Like, Francis is going to come out strong. He's going to be throwing some serious haymakers. Stipe is going to be on the move. He's going to be
Yeah.
dodging, ducking, hopefully getting a takedown here and there and wearing them out as the fight goes. Because Stipe knows he cannot stand in the middle of this octagon and just stand there and throw punch for punch with this man.
You just can't do it. And it's not even a Stipe thing. It's just there's literally no
Anyone.
one.
Yeah.
They compared Stipe, or excuse me, Francis's right hand, like a power punch from Francis, as like a 40-mile-per-hour truck hitting you square on. Like I have to find the statistic and then you can like
I
add it to
heard
this
this
clip.
today. So what I heard today was his right hand is equivalent to you remember those old Ford Escorts, like those little,
Yes.
they said his right hand is equivalent to you standing in the middle of a street and the Ford Escort going at you as hard as it physically can and hitting you. That was the comparison that I saw.
Christ,
It's
dude.
crazy.
Like someone Francis's cook or his like chef, his nutritional guide said the crazy thing about Francis is that he is a 155-pound fighter or 170-pound fighter extended to heavyweight.
Oh yeah.
Like you look at the way the other heavyweights are built. Like you're tall, you're long, you're lanky. Like even Stipe is built. They just don't look like Francis. Francis
No.
looks like Michael Chandler at 6'5", and that
Yes.
is just unbelievable. You will never see anything like it ever again.
No, not at all. So another fight that's on this card, and I don't want to get into this fight too much, but there was a quote that I want to get into a little bit. Sean O'Malley's making his first appearance since his first loss in the UFC, and he's going on a lot of shows claiming that he's still undefeated. He doesn't think that he lost that fight. He thinks that it was a freak thing that happened, even though it's something, realistically, if you get kicked in the calf, it's going to freaking hurt. What's your take on Sean O'Malley claiming that he's still undefeated heading into his first main event, per se?
The truth is like a lot of people fight anxiety or insecurity in different ways. Even like last weekend, you saw Kevin Holland lose like a 4-1 or 5-0 decision, and he's talking trash the whole time while losing. And it's probably a way for him to comfort himself. And if you're Sean O'Malley, it's probably a good way of staying as confident as you were before.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
Like for him, he's going to do this to make sure he still walks in his mind undefeated.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's more of like a confidence tool than anything else. I don't think he's necessarily trying to take away from Chito Vera, the guy he lost to, although it doesn't seem like they're the best of buds. But I think it's more of just a way for O'Malley to remain confident, say, you know what, the last fight, little weird, right? Stuff like that's going to happen, but you're still a bad dude. You're still that man. Like you still got that crazy power at the 135-pound division. You're super tall and you're a hell of a striker. So
Yeah.
I think it's more just that for him. It's like it's a way to check himself and say like, you know, you're still good. Like you're still a bad man. You're going to walk in and you're going to still put on a great show. It's probably the way I'm kind of taking this.
Right. And I kind of had the same reaction, like from Sean O'Malley's kind of come up. The Sugar Show is a thing. Like everybody wants the content. Everybody wants to watch the YouTube videos, wants to see him, what he's going to do in the octagon. I mean, he's had some incredible knockouts since he's entered the UFC. And I mean, he was calling out anybody and everybody at one point last summer. I know him and Cody Garbrandt got into it real hard on the internet. And then Cody
I was pushing for that fight last year during quarantine. I was like, yo, that is the fight to make.
See, and I was opposite of that. I was like, you know what? This is not the fight Cody needs to take right now. And you know, I love Cody. Yeah. That's my dude in the UFC. I'm happy that fight hasn't happened yet. I think it's going to eventually, but I need to see Cody in the octagon a couple more times before I'm okay seeing those two go at it, because they're just going to throw haymakers.
I know, and we can leave the Cody Garbrandt matchup for later, but when he starts throwing haymakers, things tend to get a little rough around the edges for him. So
without a doubt. So a couple weeks ago, we had Israel Adesanya versus Jan Blachowicz. Izzy made the bump from light heavy to heavyweight for that. There was a clear size differential. I just want to hear your thoughts on how that match went for Izzy. Do you think Izzy is going to go back up to heavyweight eventually, or do you think he kind of realized that like light heavy is where he wants to stay for a while?
So he's the champ at middleweight, and he went up to light heavyweight. Honestly, it was a super close fight. And, you know, a lot of people saw like Blachowicz won. I had Blachowicz winning. Yep. But there were plenty of people who thought Izzy won 3-2 in that fight. And, you know, compared to other people who fought Jan Blachowicz over the last couple of years, no one's really gotten that close. So I do think he will go back up. I do think he needs to defend his belt at 185 here soon. And I would love to see it against Robert Whittaker. He's been asking for Darren Till a few times. And I think that's a great matchup stylistically. And I think it's a great matchup for pay-per-view points. I think it would sell really well. But ultimately, like Robert Whittaker has fought every bad man. You know, of course, he did lose like in the second round to Izzy a few years back, but he deserves a rematch. He's done everything he needs to. But we're going to get it's Kelvin Gastelum, Robert Whittaker, I think, in a few weeks here. So that'll kind of be the guy. There's a good chance the winner of that fight will fight Izzy again.
Go back to see Izzy. And I agree with you. Like it was close. I personally, watching the fight, I had Izzy 3-2. But after the fight, watching it back, I really thought that Jan missed a lot of opportunities where he can go back and look at film, like just physically, like I can dominate this guy. And I think
he wanted to avoid the sharpness of Izzy early with takedowns. So like if he shot for a takedown early, I think, you know, you're in fear of a knee, you're in fear of a kick, and a fresh kick or fresh knee from Izzy just is gonna fuck you up.
Yeah,
he was a little smart, and the big round in question, I think, ultimately ends up being round 2, because I thought Izzy round one, and I thought he won round 3 as well. But round 2 was just a lot of like feints, trying to get people to move. And a lot of people were pissed at the commentary saying like, oh, he's doing a great job feigning, setting things up. But ultimately feigning and setting things up doesn't score you points. It rewards you like because it should set things up later, and it's worth noting, but it doesn't score points. In round 2, there was a lot of feigning and a lot of that going on. And so people were like, well, let's make sure who's the one scoring the points in round 2. And ultimately, I thought Blachowicz won round 2, and I was totally fine with the 3-2 decision. I don't think any of the rounds were 10-8, which one of the judges did have a 10-8 round.
I thought that was ridiculous too.
Yeah, kind of weird.
The scoring, I mean, the scoring on some of these UFC fights recently has been, and Dana White's been very vocal about this, has been very suspect. So hopefully we can balance this out here down the road. We had some breaking news over the past week or so. Khabib officially retired. Done. Do you think that this is for sure, or do you think he gets another fight in there to try to get to 30-0?
I thought it was done when he said it back in October, honestly. Okay. I thought when he said, okay, here's the deal. You promise mom that you're never fighting again. You're never fighting again. Like every single time we heard someone say, oh, Khabib's doing this, it's coming out of Dana White's mouth. And it was never out of Khabib's mouth. We never heard him say, oh, I'm contemplating things. We never heard him say like, oh, that's an interesting matchup. We never heard him say any of those things. It was literally only Dana White. And I think Khabib, being the gentleman and great business partner that he is with Dana, was like, you know what? I'm going to show you the respect and honor that you deserve at this point. I will sit down. I will always meet with you because we are great business partners. I'm done, but I'm going to give you the time of day to pitch it, to sell it, whatever you need to do. I think he's done. I think he was done back in October, and it's a good way to go out. I wish more fighters went out this way, riding off into the sunset.
Absolutely. The fight game's a dangerous game. The longer people stay around, the more and more health risks, and just, I don't see the benefits in sticking around past a certain point in this game.
A lot of it's like just the adrenaline addiction, right? Yeah. And like you can never fix that with anything else. No. And there's a reason that fighters historically like put on weight afterwards, or they get into drugs and alcohol. Like Tyson Fury wins the heavyweight championship of the world and put on 100 pounds, got into alcohol and drugs a ton. And that's honestly, I don't want to say it's normal because that's unfair, but you're going to see that honestly from time to time because guys need to fill that fix.
You're right. And it happened to me.
It's not even a sport. So
dude, I put on like 80 pounds after high school at one point. I got up to like 270, had to work my ass off to get back down to like 200 range. But yeah,
what did you wrestle at?
My senior year, I competed state at 160.
Wow.
And then by sophomore year of college, I saw 270 on the scale.
Wow.
Yeah, after I decided like I didn't want to take that route in college, I just started racking on the LBs, and it was fucking brutal. One day I woke up and was like, "Who the fuck are you?"
Were you working out at all?
So I don't want to say that I was like regularly working out, but I was consistently like playing basketball, like I was active. Like I'm an active dude, but I think just the combination of eating shitty and like thinking to myself like, oh, I never have to step on the scale again. Like, just a combination of all the, freshmen in college drinking and stuff. And just literally just happened.
It might have been a double whammy for you because the freshman 15 is real for even like non-athletes. And then you add in like the devoted lifestyle of being a wrestler for 4 years and being, it sounds like a pretty decent one for 4 years. So you combine those two things and you were just in for a rude awakening, my friend.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was talking a little bit to you about it earlier, but yeah, I went to Massillon Perry from 08 to 12. We were top 15 in the country all 4 of my years. So like that program, David Carr, national champion from Iowa State, 157, graduated from Perry, I believe in 2017, 2018. Wow. So, I mean, we've put out national champs. We put kids in college consistently. And yeah, it's a lifestyle there. And a lot of these people, especially like the UFC fighters, have been going through that kind of lifestyle since they were like 8, 9, 10 years old. So it's crazy how they can continuously just take the beatings on their body that they do.
Well, already like people are making jokes that Khabib's put on weight and he's starting to look more and more like his dad. Like, I don't know if you've seen his face recently, but
I haven't seen a picture.
Dude, it's just slowly starting to fill up a little bit and like his neck is starting to grow out this way. And dude, it's the way it is. Like, a lot of these guys shouldn't weigh what they weigh as a fighter anyways. So for Khabib, like, no, he should never weigh 155 pounds. He's probably like 190 pound or 200-pound person in general. So
Yeah.
just kind of get used to seeing that on Khabib. Take a look at it next time you see a picture, because it's starting to happen for Khabib already.
I already picture the Khabib headshot popping in here on this clip, so
Yep.
we're gonna go there for sure. Other news that was recently announced, and this will probably be our last topic today. Kamaru Usman, Jorge Masvidal, round 2 happening at UFC 261. Any initial first thoughts about that? Like, what went through your mind when you saw that?
So the big difference that like everyone's talking about is, oh, Masvidal is going to get a training camp for this. Every time someone takes a short notice fight, it's like, oh, he didn't get a training camp. Oh, he was willing to step up to the scale, no training camp needed. For Usman, he's kind of saying like, yo, Masvidal, like, we know each other well. Okay, you didn't need a training camp. Like, that was just a built-in excuse.
Right.
Which, like, whether or not that's true, I have no idea. We'll find out in a month here or whatever. But the big difference, and I don't think I've heard a lot of people talk about this, is that there's a difference fighting in an empty arena and fighting in front of a full sold out crowd, handling the nerves, handling the pressure. And I'm not saying that Kamaru Usman or Masvidal can't handle the pressure. I'm saying that that's the difference between the first fight now and the second fight. I honestly think the crowd and the first time it's going to be sold out and all of that, it means a lot more than having the full training camp. Because honestly, I think we saw a semi-conservative Kamaru Usman in the first fight where he's like, you know what? I didn't get my full training camp. I'm just going to wear out Masvidal for 5 rounds. I'm going to do what I need to do to get the win. For Masvidal, it was like, yo, I just need to land something. The second fight, I think Masvidal can kind of try and come up with something a little more clever. And if you're Usman, it's like, yeah, I can always lean back on that really Greco-Roman style, dirty boxing up against the cage stuff, but I want to finish. And he's made that pretty clear. That's what I want to see is like, oh, is Usman going to go for the finish? And does Masvidal have something he can like, a trick he can pull out of his sleeve?
Yeah, I agree with that completely. So Usman, in my opinion, he's the number 1 pound for pound guy in the UFC. I think UFC has John Jones 1, Usman 2. Mm-hmm. People will put those however. What do you think makes him so different from the rest? Because that is one scary man in an octagon.
Yeah. I just don't want to use cliches or like something corny as fuck, but it's just the mental toughness.
It's different.
And it's a cliche and it's corny, and I know that, and I hate saying it out loud, but that doesn't mean it's not real. And the truth of the matter is when Kamaru Usman steps in the ring, he breaks his opponent down. Plain and simple. Look at every single fight he's had over the last 6 years. Yeah. He breaks and wears his opponent down. And usually guys tend to fade and wilt at the pressure. And by round 3 or 4, it's ball game. Masvidal is such a tough son of a bitch. You got to give him some props for making it through 5 rounds and wanting to see the final bell. Like,
oh yeah.
Someone asked me, a kind of a gambling buddy of mine was like, yo, what do you think's worse? Like getting embarrassed for 5 rounds or getting KO'd like in round 1 or 2? And I'm like, ooh. Getting KO'd, in my opinion, is way worse than making it through 5 rounds. Even if it's boring or whatever, people don't understand like the pressure that people are going through or anxiety that they might be going through. What if like Masvidal had an injured knee or an injured foot that he didn't tell anyone about because he didn't want to like not sell the pay-per-view. He didn't want people to be like, oh, Masvidal's hurt, let's not watch it. Right. What if that happened and he was just doing everything he could to see that final bell? You would have way more like appreciation and gratitude towards him stepping in the octagon that night. So I think making it to the final bell is a worthy success story in itself.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, shit, I wrestled and I only had to do 6 minutes of constant pressure against people. These fuckers are going at it for 25 minutes.
Yeah, and like with wrestling, you're going to suffer injuries. There's a ton of injuries that happen right in the middle of a fight. But think about the common injuries that happen in a fist fight, whether it's a broken nose or a cut eye, and then all of a sudden you literally can't see out of an eye anymore. Yep. And a lot of people don't considered those like small little factors to play an impact on these fights. But dude, you break a nose, all of a sudden you can't breathe out of there.
Right.
And you go on a run right now with a broken nose. Tell me how that goes. And people are just such idiots, honestly, when they're watching fights. It drives me crazy.
It is. If you haven't actually been through any of the mental side of the fight game, you genuinely, I truly believe this, you don't understand what those guys go through. And even if you've been through a little bit, you don't understand what it's like to be in an octagon against somebody like Usman for 25 fucking minutes.
Dude, there are people who are not willing, like, there were kids in high school not willing to box one of your homies because, like, they're big and scary. And you're like, yo,
Right.
I'm not boxing him. All right, fine. There's people that are maybe willing to go to the boxing gym and maybe spar on Friday nights in front of, like, 2 coaches. There are people scared to box in front of 10 people around the ring on, like, hardcore sparring. Could you imagine 40,000 people screaming at you? Like, what if you're in an opposing country? What if you're in Brazil and you're fighting the Brazilian champion and they're like, yo, if you win this fight, we'll fucking kill you.
Literally. Dude, I had a coach, Joe Warren. He used to fight in Bellator. He told me that he won a tournament once overseas and literally couldn't leave his bathroom because people wanted to murder him.
Yeah. So I wish people probably spent a little more time to consider like all the factors that are kind of going on in the middle of the crazy world of MMA, man.
Oh, for sure. And so, like, Jorge, for me, he's been on the rise because he's been getting real involved with collegiate wrestling, Olympic wrestling. Bo Nickel's been training with them. AJ Ferrari, who just won a national title, and Jorge got together and we're doing some cool stuff. So I definitely want to see Jorge put on a good performance against Usman. Hopefully we see one hell of a fight at UFC 261.
You know, when it comes to like the superstardom dynamic, like Masvidal just probably blows away Usman.
Yeah.
I mean, Masvidal is just one of the biggest stars that the UFC has. But if you were to just look at resumes over the last 5 years, they're incomparable. Like, Usman is taking every single top 10 guy in the division and burying them. Whereas, you know, Masvidal's selling tickets, and it's amazing. You need it in the sport. This is prize fighting. It's entertainment.
Right.
This isn't an anti-Masvidal statement. It's more just a pro-Usman resume. Just look at the resumes, and holy shit, it would be hard to not look at Usman and say, dude, he's got the track record to prove that he's the baddest dude in the division.
Yeah, I mean, if not the entire MMA.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Bo, listen, man, I appreciate you hopping on. I love this. We have to do this again soon. Keep up the good work with what you guys are doing over there at 1:37 p.m. I cannot wait to see your interviews. That's going to be dropping tomorrow.
So new episode drops Tuesday, and I just got my guest today. I can't say who it is yet. When will this drop?
I'm going to put this out tomorrow, so that people can watch it and kind of get ready for the Stipe fight on Saturday.
I have my guest on Tuesday's podcast coming. So I just had Kenny Florian, longtime like UFC legend, former UFC commentator. He just got announced as the new commentator for the Professional Fighters League. Tuesday, my guest is a former UFC champ, former champ in another company as well, and he has a fight coming up in the next 2 weeks.
Damn. So, guys, listen, go follow Bo. Bo, what's your socials? Shout them out for me.
Bo Templin. It is, you know, that's the nice thing about having the name Bo is it's simple. It's like, remember in The Social Network, he's like, you know, drop the. Facebook just sounds cleaner. It's like, yo, it's just Bo Templin.
Bo Templin. We love it. All right, guys, go give Bo the follow. Thanks for watching. We will be back very soon with some more gambling content, some more picks for you. Have a solid afternoon, everybody. Go watch the fights tomorrow. Go watch Bo's episode on Tuesday and the one he just dropped past Tuesday. I will see you guys later.
God bless. Take care. Thanks for having me, brother.
Hey, for sure. Dude.